So a lot of people ask me, where does the idea for Maltego really come from? Sound okay? Can you hear me at the back? And I'm going to tell you where the idea of Maltego really came from. To know this, you got to look at my bedroom in 2000. This is what it looked like, 23 years ago. And you'll notice there at the top is a sign that says Sense Post. Because Sense Post started in my bedroom. And Sense Post then became Orange Cyber Defense. You can see they stand upstairs. They at the conference. And when I worked at Sense Post for 7 years, I was one of the co-founders. I was running the pen testing team. And really my passion was black box testing, so I did a lot of footprinting. And I got pretty good at footprinting. That's where you find the machine with the vulnerability, not the vulnerability on the machine. So big international networks, that was really my passion. In 2006, I ran the Innovation Center, and I came up with a couple of interesting ideas. Just to give you an idea of what our footprinting methodology looked like, that was the slide. A lot of the slides that you'll see here today is from slides that I presented at Black Hat, DEF CON, all over the world, and I literally took and paste them into this presentation. That was our final footprinting methodology, and later on you'll see why this is important. I also looked at tools like what I called back then Spimmer, which was looking at, you input a email address and you get like related names and telephone numbers. So you can see kind of the thinking started going Maltego-ish. One of the biggest influences at the time was by a guy called Jeff Jonas. He's still very active. You might know of him. He now, he used to work for IBM for a long time. And he did a talk at DEF CON in 2002 on a thing that he called NORA, which was non-obvious relationship analysis. And it was really, really interesting to me. And a lot of the ideas that I had was because of this talk that he gave. I actually mailed him when Maltego was a big success and said, hey, thanks, this was really inspirational. And he was really nice about it. We had a really good talk. Good guy, if you want to know. He looks at big data stuff, so interesting guy. Anyhow, 2002 did the talk. So I built this thing when I was still at SensePost called, what I called it, the intelligence console. And then basically how it worked is you put in an idea and you grind the machine and other things drop out. So you'll see here, over here, you'll see that maybe you'll start with something like Pebblebed reactor. It will lead to an email address that would go to another phrase. Back then we just had phrases as well. That gives you a telephone number and that goes to an email address. This is literally a slide with a background that's really corny and low resolution from 2006 that I presented at a conference in Norway called the HackCon, right? And I think the next slide here, this picture, and I know at the back you probably can't see it, but this picture basically sums up, I think, the biggest thinking behind Maltego. So what you see on the side are IP addresses, IP blocks, URLs, email, domain, organization, name, surname, phrase, and telephone number. And the little things that come out of it are ways that we can shuffle them between these things. Like find out where the country is from the telephone number, and things like this. The things on the left became, on the first level of the tree basically became entities, and the second level of the tree became transforms. That was 2006. In the middle, you'll see this thing called the intelligence console. I left SensePost in 2007, at the end of 2006. 2007, because I really wanted to pursue this thing. They were a pen testing company and I was tired of testing pens, so I kind of left. And like I said, I worked on this thing called the intelligence console, and I thought, that's a shitty name, let's just call it evolution, So this evolution of thinking, and really early on I kind of figured out that I need a UI for this, like it would be nice to have a graph because this stuff looks like a graph, right? And I asked someone named Chris to help me build it. Now, Chris worked with me at the company before I started SensePost, which was called Nanotech, and we did like military encryption devices. It was pretty interesting. So he worked there. As a student, I worked there, and I said, hey, listen, Chris, can you build something that is a graphical UI for this? Chris had a company at the time called Pink Matter. Initially, I went to Chris. I said, let's just go 50-50 on this thing. He said, I need the money. I can't go and develop this for free. And also, maybe many people have good ideas, but that doesn't necessarily make it a business. So at the end, I said, okay, well, let's do 30-70. I'll give you 30%. I'll take 70. But let's work at a reduced development rate, right? And that's how we went. You'll see in some of the code samples, you'll still see it says IC3, which was Intelligence Console. So it came from, the work that I started when I was at SensePost. And you'll see that it says Transform Runner and stuff like this. So back then we called it evolution. And you can see that the thinking there was exactly what we have with Maltego today. Initially, I had this idea that Maltego should really be something else, where you basically put in a piece of information, it runs what would now be called all transforms. It then goes to all of the results and runs all transforms on this again automatically. So in the next slide, you'll see the slides, the backgrounds and stuff is different because it's from different presentations. I did it different times. And the end goal really was to see that you put in a phrase or a concept or a telephone number or name or any of the kind of things, and then you just crank this huge wheel, and it basically, after a bit of time, says, oh, actually, you should be looking at this. But the problem was when we did it, in fact, everything just said, hey, and when you're done, look at Wikipedia and look at Adobe, because Adobe Acrobat, that little download button, sits on every bloody website. So when you start indexing sites, everything goes, oh, you should look at Adobe. And we're like, well, that's not really what it is. So you get these little clusters on the internet that stuff gravitates towards Google, Wikipedia, things like this. And it doesn't really make sense. So we kind of abandoned that idea and said, oh, it should be an interactive kind of thing. We had a web interface. I built the web interface. That's why it looks so awesome. What? Does it look awesome? I think it looks awesome. I think actually it looks not bad given that this was in 1983. Still was called evolution at the time, but it was clear for us that we kind of needed a UI. We couldn't. You can see on a web interface one level of separation, but you can't see when things link together. After a lot of stuff. So we had a GUI. This was Chris had the company called Pink Matter, and he had the company with Sonia. That is the day after the first beta that we released. There's a photo of it I took in their offices. 2007, I presented at Kanzek West, and this is what Maltego looked like, guys. It was ugly, right? We had our own library that we built. It was a nightmare. We had our own graphing library. If there's anything you don't want to do is your own graphing library, just don't do it. Get something off the shelf. Don't build your own graphing library. It's a shit show. You can see this is from a whiteboard in my bedroom where we're trying to figure out what the rules should be, how the layout should be. Just don't bother. So we're now in August 2007. We get Evolution for a download. It looked like this. This was the first beta. You can kind of start seeing that it's kind of Maltego-ish. But the layout, it took me a long time to do the layout so that it looked like that. It didn't look like that by itself. Here's another picture of what it looked like. And we changed the architecture. And the one thing that we did was important was change the architecture so that the transforms was not running locally. It was now running on a server. When it's running on the server, you can change it quickly. You don't need to recall all of the stuff running on the client, right? So you can easily make changes to the code. This is what the web interface looked like. There's the Maltego logo before we actually changed the Maltego logo. And then we went commercial in May 2008, right? This is when Andrew McPherson joined. He was the first employee. He's the guy that you see on all the videos. And he used to have this crazy mohawk, right? As you can see in the picture. And I said, dude, like, I don't know, like, we went to a really conservative client in Europe, in Switzerland, and I was like, it's either you go with, or you can have your mohawk and stay in South Africa, or cut it off and come with me to Europe. And he cut it off, right? So that's when he still had the mohawk. And we found this barn that we worked in. Andrew built all the websites. He built the first one, and then I was like, you're going to build all the websites. He did a lot of the work as well, heavy lifting. This is what Paterva's first office looked like. Okay, it was literally a barn. It was hell of a cold there. There was FL insulation, as you can see. We freezed our butts off in that place. Okay, then I came up with the logo for Maltego. And then people were like, Maltego, Paterva, Malterva, what is the difference? You know, those were not brands at all. Maltego wasn't a brand, Paterva wasn't a brand. But I wanted to keep the company name and the product name separate. That became these logos later on, so that kind of looked nice. Now in 2008, we started building servers as well, because I remember we had the differentiated between the server and the client. And actually the story about the server is pretty interesting. We never wanted to sell servers, ever. So we had this company come to us and say, oh, but you know, we're seeing all of the searches. Can you please let us run our own server? And we're like, no. And they say, well, we'll pay for it. And we were like, we really didn't want to do it. And we said, let's just make the price ridiculously high, and they will just go away. We can't tell them go away. We'll just be like, it's $12,000. And they're like, cool, here's a check, $12,000. And we're like, oh shit. So now we had to build servers. And then when we got this check for $12,000, like, this is great. Let's just build servers, man. We're selling our client at $430 a pop. We can sell servers for $12,000 a pop. So we started building servers. At the time we released version 2 of Maltego, this is what it looked like. And you can see already, this looks a lot more like Maltego today. It's like same kind of vibe. We then had a commercial layout library, graphing library called Y-Files. What a pleasure. We should have done it way earlier, right? Okay, that's, you can see what Maltego 2 looked like. All right, a little bit more slides. Out of interest, I found like this Excel spreadsheet from 2008 about the financials of the company, right? And that's what it looked like. You know, that was, we made $6,000 loss. You know. Okay, now in 2009, we released 2.01, and we started working on version 3 of the client, and we started selling servers. Like I said, we didn't want to sell it. Here you can see, then we were just like, let's build servers. And we had CTAS, we had SQL TAS, we had the PT TAS, we had the MOL TAS, we had the OSINT TAS. Everything was just the TAS, man. Transform Application Server, right? So there were tons of it. Like for instance, the SQL TAS was the server that you can basically hook onto a SQL database, and on the other side you have transforms, and then the data in the database that's structured becomes a graph within Maltego. This was 2009 that we had this thing, right? And it connected to like a ton of different databases. It was really good. PT TAS also, you know, a lot of the stuff like run nmap, get the output. You'll see a little bit about it later on. We also did a little bit of a detour into these kind of things. We probably have to cut this out of the video as well, but not really. We never really got into this stuff, right? That's what the website looked like in 2010. In June 2010, we did our first version 3 commercial, and we had a TDS, which was a transform distribution server. Here you can actually see the video of what it looked like. This was 2010. And so this gave us the ability to extend Maltego so that you can have local transforms, so people can code it on their own, or they can distribute these transforms via the TDS. And that was really a game changer in a way. Later on, that led to what is now called the Transform Hub. So you know where all of your transforms live? It basically started with the TDS in 2010. Okay, so 2011, we got the Maltego 3.1. Everything kind of that you expect from a grown-up application, you know, bookmarks, all of those things. And we did a workshop at Black Hat in Barcelona, and we met someone in Barcelona that wasn't even at the conference. They said, hey, come speak to us. We like to know about this tool. And we kind of decided we didn't want to go because it was outside the conference and whatever. And eventually we went, we walked there because it was close by. And we met with this guy that was at a bank there. And that guy became really important for us later on because he basically opened the door to all of Silicon Valley. So I have a thing about it later on, right? And I think at the end, the reason why I didn't go anywhere because we were too South African, right? But we were still like 4 people at that stage. And we trained the first year there in Black Hat, and that was important because we trained every year at Black Hat until 2018. Okay, so people at that stage had these promo videos that they gave out that was super formal, like, you know, we're going to teach you about this at Black Hat. And Black Hat said, okay, well, you can put out anything, we don't care. So we put out this video.
I've been rapping for about 17 years, okay? I don't write my stuff anymore. I just kick it from my head, you know what I'm saying? I can do that. No disrespect, but that's how I am.
Okay, I realize you can't see.
I've been rapping for about...
I realize you can't see that at the back, right? So I'm not going to go through the whole video, but it was basically just me typing with rat-tat-tat playing at the back, right? Okay, so this is what Maltego looked like at that stage. This was Maltego 3, and you can see now it starts looking like the thing that you know today, right? This was 2011. We made a office video, which I'm also not going to show because we're running out of time, with an epic film score. And really at that stage, this is a slide that we had for In-Q-Tel. My thinking was, I like Maltego to be this thing that is basically this information IDS. That means you got these feeders and buckets of information coming in from various sources in real time. And then you have these things called triggers that based on certain graph conditions would say, hey, this is interesting, you should wake up and look at the graph. And all of that should run on something that is not your desktop. It should kind of run in the cloud. So you would set up your transforms, you would set up your feeders, the stuff that feeds you the information, and you would set up your graph conditions and then go, you know, let's say your feeders are, I don't know, people that board airplanes, and your triggers, your conditions is that someone connected to someone that is on a watch list somewhere. So then you have this intrusion detection system, but that works on any kind of information set. And that was part of the things that I wanted to build. So Maltego becomes a system that can mine, visualize, react to data in real time, information-driven IDS, custom entities, transforms, feeders, and triggers. That never happened, right? We went into this period where we went for element names. So we had radium, tungsten, carbon, chlorine. I thought it was really cool. I don't know, maybe it wasn't that cool. I thought it was cool. All right. So 2012, we're still 4 people, right? It's me, it's Chris, it's Andrew, and a guy called Anton. That's one of the core developers of the 3 stream. We made super cool videos. I loved making videos. We also made a thing called case file, which was like if you don't have transforms, you can just draw little pictures with it. It was really cool. Then in 2012, we built machines, which is super powerful. It's the scripting thing on how you can script transforms together. And that's kind of cool because remember the slide that I had with all of the methodology of the footprinting? That could now be encapsulated in the script that we now call the level 3 footprinting machine within Maltego. So when you click on level 3, that's actually what happens. All the stuff that happens on the left is what happens when you click on a level 3. This is in Iceland. We did this big release in Iceland for version 3, for the Radium release with scripting. Chris and me and Andrew went there. We got lost in Iceland. This is there on the left-hand side. Chris wasn't very amused. I thought it was hilarious. Andrew also. But that was at the Nordic Security Conference in 2011, 2012. And I wanted a video of us pressing the button and making Radium live. And this is actually the video. And okay, so what do we say?
well, it's recording now, so this should have come before.
Son, Maltego Radium is now.
Something about Iceland too.
Live.
No, Chris. I said no me.
Okay, Maltego Radium just went live from Iceland.
Yeah, new website too.
New website from some little boy's room in Iceland.
I don't think put that down. Listen, that doesn't give the right image, guys.
Okay, so Maltego Radium just went live from Iceland.
Yeah, and then
A new website too. And then what, the address?
yeah, /web6.
Why? Stop. It's already done.
I know, but then you can click on it and go see the new site and download the new client and whatever.
Oh, the website.
Yeah.
So just www.paterva.com.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because it's now.
Yes, so that's when Chris was making the video, and we literally it was at a party somewhere, and we were like, okay, today's the day, we got to put it out. And they only had internet in this room. 2013, I was on top of the world. I was like, oh, everything is amazing. I had this thing I presented this talk that basically says we were unstoppable. We did this talk in 2013 at Black Hat called Maltego Tungsten as Collaborative Attack Platform. I thought it was going to be awesome. But really, if I think about it, that was kind of when things started going not so great, right? Because we had a lot of stuff that we wanted to do in that talk, like lots. We had shared graph, we had all the things, we had a new website, we had Kingfisher, we had like a whole lot of things packed into that thing. And I gave the talk and, people were just like, oh, cool. I was like, dude, we wanted to have trumpets and a red carpet and cheerleaders and shit like that. Like I was just like deflated after that. So after Black Hat, I was really low and I was like, maybe I want to get out, this is not for me. And so we had interest to buy the company from Secure Data UK. That was actually the company that bought SensePost, right? So my old SensePost mates were like, dude, let's buy the company. We moved from Pretoria to Cape Town. It wasn't a great thing. In Cape Town, we got Paul. That's the guy on the right in the picture. And really, if you want to kill a company, just buy it. It's super disruptive. I'll get into that. We also make this thing called Maltego Black that was never released. Nobody knows about this. Like I said, I can't talk about it too much, but it was kind of I'm going to skip this video as well. But it was kind of like we pitched it kind of for military use. It didn't really fly for various reasons, but it was a thing at some stage, right? I made this video. I was just like, man, I think we're done.
Come to decide that the things that I tried were in my life just to get high on. When I sit alone, come get a little known, but I need more than myself this time. Step from the road to the sea to the sky, and I do believe that we rely on. When I lay it on, come get to play it on, all my life to sacrifice. Hey, oh, listen what I say, oh.
So instead of making graphs, we were now making Excel graphs. We were drawing like graphs of sales and shit like that. But there was still stuff that I wanted to do, so I said to them, give us a few years before we do the whole deal. And we always had kind of fun as well. Like, as you can see, I loved making films and videos and stuff like this. And this was Paul's first day on the job, and we like, dude, don't worry about coding or stuff. You got to go rub this egg. We're going to make a video of it. So that is literally his first day at the job, and he's like super confused. That was behind the scenes of making the What is Maltego video. And actually the stuff at the back that you see there, that kind of 70 vibes that we had there, we stuck it on with tape onto the wall there. So you can see little white dots. Those little white dots are sticky tape that we just stuck the whole thing on. It was cool. Okay, so 2015, we on Chlorine. We got a new employee, Rimonette. She did all our finances. What a pleasure, right? Trained everywhere, Black Hat. We trained at Underground Economy, trained at DCC, trained at SAS. We had the Transform Hub in 2015. We had a new context menu. we did a rebranding of the logo. As you can see, not a great idea. I thought that was a cock logo. But anyhow, sorry, Paul. And I was flying to Cape Town then. That's what the office looked like, right? There's a version that's called Maltego Plutonium, never released because it went to become Maltego 4. This is a team. There on the right is Chris and Anton in the front, and Andreas is a guy that helped as well at the back, and Paul and Andrew and Sonia, right? 2016, we did Maltego XL. We moved back to Pretoria, the offices. This is what it looked like, the offices in Pretoria. That's Andrew Walters started working for us. Another guy started working for us. But we were literally at that stage, we were like a couple of people, right? And then the UK deal failed. And they were like, oh, we had a really shitty year. We can't afford to buy a company anymore. And our finances was really taking off. We were like hockey stick kind of vibes, right? And they're like, well, we can't pay you. We can't buy the company anymore. And so the VC that had that company reshuffled the company. There was a new chairman. He was fairly mature as an age. And he's like, you guys don't even have a receptionist. And we're like, yeah, we also don't have a fax machine, you know. So what's your point? And he was like, well, you're not a real company. No, we're not a real company. We were doing pretty good numbers at the time. And so they didn't really want to buy the rest of that 75%. And at the time, I had really bad kind of friction with Chris and Sonia. And it was all about money and things like that, right? So I was like, yeah, I'm getting out, right? 2017, we built the MDS. Now, you would never see the MDS because the MDS was never released. We got the MDS done. The Maltego data server integrates with Splunk and SQL. We made videos, we made documentation, we had a web interface for the thing. That thing never flew. I still don't know today. If you see some of the Maltego people, ask them, where's the MDS? Because it was neat. That didn't happen. Okay, so 2017 is my last full year at Paterva. I decided, okay, we're going to do a lot of housekeeping. We're going to rewrite all the transforms. We automate like the entire system. We automate a lot of stuff, but at that stage, everything was basically running without any user input. Like everything ran. We had these dashboards for everything. We could basically see when any trending that was happening. We redid all of the licensing. We made Maltego 4.1 that combined all of the different Maltegos into one product. That's what it is today, right? And this is the last video I actually did of with Andrew. Or was it the last video? So December 2017, I started the company with 70%, right? And then I exited with 50%. And that 20% was kind of wrestled from me, and I was worn down to the point where I was like, okay, that's fine. I want to go, right? And when I left, we were 10 people. We were 10 people in total. This is the blog post that I wrote that says, goodbye, I'm out. After when I left, Paterva, the name, because of legal reasons, they said, we're closing that down. We're going to call it Maltego. I was like, well, that's probably a good idea, right? There's not this confusion about what's the brand, what is the product, and things like this. And all of the people that worked with me, they had this deal to stay for a year. Andrew left exactly a year. He's like, a year's done, I'm out. But Paul still works, contracted there until last year. Andrew Walters is still working there. Andrew Monette's still working there. We had this kind of a reunion party thing that this was the whole team. This was the company that ran this thing, right? And then in October, the end of October, I get a phone call that Chris was killed. And he's killed in a home invasion, and it was pretty shit. And the rest of the story, now, April 2023, they got a $100 million injection USD. So, it's not bad. So I'm kind of happy, and I'm totally okay with when I exited and all of that. Like, there's no, I'm totally okay. But now it's a big company. Now it's like a thing. It's like, 100 million US. That's a chunk of money, right? Okay, I'm going to talk about lessons learned. I'm going to be quick because is it okay? Okay. Yeah, okay. So people spend money for two reasons: because they can't do something or because they don't want to do something. And they spend money more on things that they can't do. So if you can build something that people can't do, like, let's say, I don't know, eye surgery. It's not like I can be like, oh, I'm just lazy today. That's why I'm not doing eye surgery on myself. I can't do eye surgery, and therefore, eye surgery is expensive. Right? So if you can have software that does stuff that other people can't do, then people will pay more money for that. At the time when we did Maltego, we were like, well, we do kind of stuff, the graph stuff and the interactivity. People couldn't do it back then. Now, it's a different story, right? I want to talk about misconceptions, right? People always told us, hey, you know what? Big companies are not going to deal with you. That's horseshit. Big companies love dealing with us, right? We once had I'll tell that story later. Okay. The other misconceptions are like finances and contracts. Ooh, you'll never have a company because I don't understand finances and contracts. Well, I don't understand finances or contracts either. But you get people that can do it. And you tell them, I'm an engineer and a hacker. You need to speak to me like I'm a 5-year-old, and they will do that. Like, when you speak to people, they can speak to you, contracts like that. Like, the other misconception is, we're never going to be able to do this because support is so difficult. The support is nothing. We had, at the time when I left, there were, I think, 750,000 community registered users in the user base, right? And we supported them with one support person. It was a shitty job, but it was one support person, right? So you can do it. On the right, you'll see there is what we called canned responses. We had these canned responses that goes, oh, my license expired. Okay, canned response, your license expired. Thank you, done. We did it with Google Gmail. No Jira ticketing system shit. We did it with Gmail. That's it. Copy protection. I want to quickly talk about copy protection. You probably don't need it. The bottom line is you probably don't need copy protection. You can spend your whole life making sure people don't copy your software, but at the end of the day, the people that's going to buy your software are going to buy your software anyhow, right? You can fix all of that with contracts. You could be like, here's the contract. And you say to people, you cannot use this tool commercially. And if you say that, then people go, okay, well, what do I need to do? You need to buy a license. Literally, when I started my second company, I said, the only difference between commercial and community is that you can't use the commercial, you can't use the free version for commercial work. And when a company comes and they need to work with you, they say, okay, we'll buy a license. So I want to talk about marketing. Marketing is like a dark art, right? I think tech people are immune to marketing. We just don't see ads anymore. We just don't see it, right? So traditional media doesn't work. Specials, I don't know, specials never worked for us, and it kind of diminished the brand of your product. You go, you can buy this now for 80% off. Well, then you're willing to sell it at 80% less. So why should I pay the next day, 80% more? It diminishes your brand. That's my feeling. When you say something about your product, 1 point. If someone else says something about your product, 1,000 points, right? But both negative and the positive way. I feel that presentation and a feel kind of for stuff matters. Ask Apple. Apple, I don't know, Apple products just look amazing. That's why people want to buy it. A Harley Davidson is a shitty motorcycle. I'm sorry, you can say, I used to drive a bike. It's a shitty bike. It's slow, it doesn't handle well, it's loud, it's obnoxious. But they sell because they have that vibe, right? Okay. Another thing is you 100% underestimate the laziness of people. If you look at a product and they're making money, you know that their buying experience is good. It's friction-free. When you buy stuff, you know that you go, oh no, you've got to like register for this thing. Fuck, I'm not going to register for this. And you leave, right? So the better you can make the payment system, the more money you'll make, guaranteed. Okay, I'm not going to do that slide. pick your payment gateway carefully. Once you're in that payment gateway, you can't get out of it easily, right? It's difficult, right? And eat your own dog food. I have a slide about that. I have this thing about the ratios of download versus install versus use versus buy. And that funnel almost goes tenfold back. So if you tell me I've got 1,000 people downloading my software, yeah, you probably have one guy buying it. So keep it in mind. Developers, don't get a developer that looks like the guy on the right. Get a developer that looks like the guy on the left. He's the developer. The other guy is not. Don't be like, I get a well-rounded individual as a developer. They can't code. Don't get them. Okay. You got to balance three things: cost, features, and time. And it's almost the whole thing is this balancing act between these things. How much is it going to cost me? How much can I get for it? And how long is it going to take to develop? And if you're replicating work, you can pick two. You can control two. But if you're doing new work, you can almost control only one. Right? You can say, I want the cost to be this. And then you'll see what the features and the time will be like. Or you can say, I want these features, and then you'll see what the cost and the time will be like. The most tricky thing, you can ask him as well, is to know what to develop next. What is the next thing I should need to do? And when you always ask people what is it that you want, you end up building an operating system. At some stage, you need to say, I'm going to tell you what you want. You need this thing. This is what you need to have. I still have time, right? Yeah. Okay. I thought it's like a bar. You know, when they put the lights on, you got to go. And so, okay. So dictate. You can dictate to the market and say, I tell you, you want this feature. This is important for you, right? Okay, and you're always balancing features versus time versus income. Don't always ask yourself, if I make this feature, how many more licenses will I sell? Because if you ask that question the whole time, you'll build a tool that's like everything else in the market, right? Okay, and then finally, obviously, the most important factor of success is the product. Now, these slides that you just saw was from a presentation that I gave in 2013. So I still believe most of those things, but I've learned a lot more now, right? I've sold the company twice, a tech company. I sold it twice. I sold it to the UK guys, and then I sold it to the Germans as well, right? So I can tell you a little bit about selling a company. And actually, my advice is don't sell your company. It's a shit show. It's not great. It takes years of your life. Don't sell it. If you don't want to sell it, don't sell it. Okay? The process is disruptive AF, right? Especially when you're a small team of people. We were 5 people. So all of a sudden, I need to go pull stats out of things and, like, you know, look at the funnel for this and that and X and Y and Z. It's very disruptive, right? And money changes people. Now, we spoke about it yesterday. There's fear in people always, and there's fear of when there's money on the table. When you take a pile of cash and you put it on the table, let's say 1,000 euros, then people have fear of losing that 1,000 euros. When you say you have the ability to make 1,000 euros, but if you don't do this, X or Y, Z, you will not make 1,000 euros, that fear is a lot less than the fear that's driving you when there's money already on the table. The fear of losing money is much bigger than the fear of not making money. So when someone comes to you with a proposition and they say, I'll give you $1 million for your company, there's money on the table. Everybody around the room changes. Keep it in mind, your best friends, they're going to change, right? You know them, oh, I know them, they're going to be okay with the contract. They're not going to be, they're going to screw you, right? So money changes people. And tech people like us, I think most of the people here are kind of tech people, and business people are different creatures altogether, right? You can say, oh, but these guys care about the company and the tech. They don't give a shit. They only care about the money. They can say that they care about the tech, but they care about the money. And when you sell your company, you go to people, they look at your numbers and only your numbers, and you'd be like, yeah, but we're building all of this cool stuff, and they're like, don't give a shit. What is your numbers? So the bean counters only care about numbers, right? If I think about what are the key factors that made Maltego successful, it's that it was graph-based, that it was interactive and responsive and immersive. We said Hollywood quality, and it made people that used it feel clever. You know that thing that says Maltego makes smart people smarter? It's that thing. Like they were like, you know, we had this one client that said, when the boss comes in, I put the thing in organic interactive layout mode. And then the boss was like, oh, look at this stuff. It's crazy. You guys are like, oh, you're doing such complex work here in cyber. I'm like, yeah, well, it's the example graph, right? Okay. And so I think we did that right. We made it look sexy, right? That's important. I think the right sequence of innovation and the roadmap, that was pretty cool. It ran on all platforms. Now you're going to say, well, yeah, it ran on all platforms. Come on, everything is browser-based. But back then, it was a big deal. Like we had, you know, stuff running on all platforms. The Transform Hub, the fact that you can mix data from different providers, those were good things that made Maltego win. The non-tech kind of stuff, the biggest thing that I can tell you now is we use the tool. We use the tool every day for things that we investigated. If you do not use your software, you're not going to build a product that is nice. You need to love your software. You need to use your software. You need to love your software, right? We got included early on in Backtrack. Who remembers Backtrack? You're old. Okay, you also old, but you've got a grey beard, so we could see it. So Backtrack was Kali. Before Kali became Kali, Kali was called Backtrack. And Maltego was one of the top 10 tools within Backtrack. Made a huge difference. All of a sudden, we had like millions of users, right? Just flocking in, right? So Matt, thanks. We did a lot of training. We trained a lot. We trained at Black Hat. We trained at DCC. We trained at Underground Economy. Trained at SAS. Made a huge difference, right? So thanks to Jeff, Ping, Steve, Kristen, Ryan, all of those people. The conference talks that we did gave the tool a lot of credibility, okay? People were like, yeah, I saw them at like Kanzek West, and we're like, yeah, okay? And I think one of the most important things is we had fun building this thing. You could see we had a lot of fun. When you're doing something that's fun, it kind of rubs off on other people, right? Now, what do I know now, today? If I have to say today, what do I know? I did all of this again, like exactly the same way, with a company called Vortimo. And it kind of didn't work. So all of the stuff that I'm telling you now, you're going to be like, well, yeah, I did all of that, it didn't work. Well, I've done it all like that, and it didn't work. Okay? So what can I add? Well, luck plays a role. Luck plays a role. Luck, timing, and opportunity. And if you don't chase opportunities, every opportunity, you know what they say, you know, the more you try, the luckier you get. So small breaks goes into big things, and you got to take all of those opportunities, right? I think it's important to have friends and teams. It's important. Like I'm doing all of this on my own, and it sucks, right? And journalists are cheap and lazy and flaky. That's what I can also tell you. I'm going to play out with the last video.
Those that do not only bend the rules, but completely operate without them. But always have more ideas. Those that never run out of approaches. They never give up when their landscape changes. Where you go from there, it's up to you and your imagination.
There we go. Thank you very much for your attention.